All right, today we have Jeremy Gardner, Executive Director of the College Cryptocurrency Network and Director of Operations at Augur. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it's an utter pleasure. So talk to us a little bit about what is Augur and what is it that you're doing?
Okay, so Augur's really cool. Tony knows all about it. But what we're doing is we're taking blockchain technology and, in my mind, really applying it to a consumer use case, in the first world at least, for the very first time, by taking prediction markets, which are pretty much just markets where people bet on the outcomes of future events such as presidential elections or academic research, whatever you please, and buy shares of yes or no of whether something's going to happen. And that to me is really exciting because betting is something people love to do, something they traditionally have not been able to do online. By putting prediction markets on the blockchain, they can do it now. So that's what Augur is.
And as a quick follow-up to that, since I joined the Augur team, I got a chance to go out to San Francisco and meet everyone. I can't say enough about everyone in the group is incredibly bright. They really know the product well. I learned a bunch just by hanging out with them. And the other thing I had the pleasure to do was meet Robin Hanson, someone who I wasn't really familiar with, how influential he was, not just with the prediction market scene and the whole Bayesian statistics scene, but really a part of the early crypto scene and hanging out with the cypherpunks and Tim May and things like that. He has roots in there, and it's very interesting to see how close these worlds are and how they're going to get closer. And this is really cool because we were able to bring Jeremy on today, and we really want to talk mostly about college crypto, but really the Augur team is turning out to be like an all-star team that's trying to execute this, and I can't say enough for everyone about it. But with that being said, I do want to go into the CCN because that's actually how I met you at the first time, Jeremy. How and why did you start this? Were you a part of what started CCN? And tell us how big it's grown since you started it.
So my experience with the CCN is really just reflective of my entire experience with Bitcoin. In that, the first time I was introduced to Bitcoin was reading a Rolling Stone article about the Silk Road and how you can buy drugs on the internet now, and I was like, well, that's interesting, but it didn't seem to have much value to me, and I didn't really return to Bitcoin for another year until the fall before this, in which I was told by my friends that the value of Bitcoin was about to skyrocket. It was at about 200, and I don't typically take my friends' investment advice, but I did my research. I saw all the sentiment was building. So then the Silk Road closed, bought in. Maybe it was right before or after that. But then the price shot up to $1,000. I got out. I was like, all right, this is too good to be true. Sold my Bitcoin and was like, all right, this tool is good for buying drugs and as a speculative investment. But I didn't really understand the value of the blockchain until I transferred to the University of Michigan last winter. And I moved in with a fellow named Kennard Hockenhall, who was, he started the second U.S. Bitcoin exchange in the United States and went through the Boost Accelerator. When I met him, his company had been defrauded and he was kind of restructuring, and he was in Ann Arbor. And, I just happened to move in with all of his former fraternity brothers, and he was crashing with them at the time. And, I was the only one that would humor him about Bitcoin because I knew what it was. I had had some positive experiences with it. And so I listened to him, and, well, he's a pretty hardcore anarchist. He started to talk about this blockchain, and I started to read about it and found it really compelling. So when I was asked to join the University of Michigan Bitcoin Club, I was like, sure, I'll go, and didn't really make much of it. But my first Michigan Bitcoin Club meetup, a reporter from USA Today comes along, and she's talking about, in the middle of our interview, how there's similar Bitcoin clubs at MIT and Stanford. Now, to me, this was really interesting because I had recently worked in political campaigns and been really disillusioned by the American political system, but I still had a deep desire to organize. So I asked the reporter to put us in touch with those other students at MIT and Stanford, and she did. And that night, in fact, we ended up on a phone call with them. And Danny, the head of the Michigan Bitcoin Club, and who go on to become my co-founder of the CCN, was speaking to those students about their respective successes and failures as clubs, how they could better organize, sharing resources. And I was like, hey, why don't we create an organization out of this? About a month later, the CCN was born. Fast forward about 10 months later to today, and we're now a federal tax-exempt organization, 501c3. We've got chapters in about 35 countries, every habitable continent, and about 160 schools worldwide. We've hosted over 24 events around the world, and there's no sign of letting up. And I guess that's a quick summary of CCN, kind of how I got involved. Oh, and my driving factor in founding CCN was that I realized that, look, if I actually had used Bitcoin or seen Bitcoin be purchased and bought and only thought it was good for buying drugs or speculating, and then realizing much later on that it was actually this incredibly transformative technology, maybe as transformative as the internet, that there was a huge information problem. And that was why the need for the CCN arose, because there were no professors, academics, professionals really talking about Bitcoin and the blockchain in an intelligent manner. So I thought it was vastly important that we create a generation of what I call cryptocurrency communicators.
So Jeremy, in your communication with a lot of the students in the college cryptocurrency network, what do you find to be the most common story for how people came to find Bitcoin? You have a really fascinating one yourself, but what are sort of the demographics of the people you see and the motivations that are bringing them to this technology?
So what really amazes me more than anything is the fact that Bitcoin seems to transcend socioeconomic background, religious beliefs, geographic positioning. I mean, we're in 10 countries in Africa. We have students that have lived through civil wars. You know, then we have super affluent kids as well. That, you know, I mean, they're old money in England. You know, what the most defining characteristic of young Bitcoiners is not any given characteristic, but just the notion that this technology has the power to transform the world. So I'll take an example from one of my students from Ghana, who was saying to me how he wanted the people of Ghana to use Bitcoin because they fell so far behind with the internet revolution. And he saw so much potential in this Bitcoin technology that he wanted to bring it to these people, to his people, before the rest of the world adopted it. In other places in the world, I mean, it's the idea that you can transfer value or you can decentralize. Some people want to subvert government, you know. To me, it's just the understanding that this technology is the brink of something extraordinarily special that may not be fully developed yet, but has the potential to change the world. And each and every one of these students want to be a part of that change.
Excellent. So what's next? Like, what are some of the most ideal communities that you'd want to see sort of involved with College Cryptocurrency Network? Who's ideal?
So, I mean, I think every young person is ideal because there's not a single young person in the world, I mean, maybe in very isolated communities, that haven't been affected by the aftermath of 9/11, being in this kind of national security state globally, and then also this great recession that we've lived through. So I guess, to me, I want to see the people who can benefit most. I think those people that have been disenfranchised in the past, lack of access to bank accounts, lack of access to the internet, and really see Bitcoin be able to empower those people, cryptocurrencies be able to empower those people. But it's a slow process. You know, you have to have education. You have to have the means to kind of help communities embrace this technology. So I think we're on the right path. I don't really have any target demographics because, like I said, we're in 10 countries in Africa. I'd like to see us expand more in Latin America. We're looking to translate all of our materials into Spanish. I think that's a huge target region that we haven't been nearly involved enough in. But overall, I mean, if we can stay on the trajectory we've been on for the past 10 months, I'd be absolutely delighted because we have accomplished so much and our students have done so much without us providing lots of money or anything. So to me, when people ask, do you want to raise a bunch of money, I'm hesitant because, you know, we have been developed in a very decentralized manner. And when students need money, we'd like to connect them to sponsors and individuals that can help them. But you know, as an organization, I'm really satisfied with the trajectory that we're on.
Excellent. So you're talking a little bit about the Latin American markets. Can you unwrap that a little bit? What's so exciting about, you know, Central and South America that really makes you think that Bitcoin really needs to be present there?
Well, you look at places like Venezuela and Argentina, places that have experienced horrible hyperinflation, and you know, we complain about the collapse and the fluctuations in Bitcoin, but hyperinflation is 1,000 times worse because it only really moves in one way. And you know, the people in Venezuela and people in Argentina and elsewhere, you know, they're pretty computer savvy folks, and with the capital controls that exist in those countries, Bitcoin has a huge potential to affect those people and help them move their money around without kind of government interference. And you know, I'm what most Bitcoiners would call a statist, but by the extent of control that the state has over the lives of the people in many countries in Latin America, I think Bitcoin has a huge transformative potential to for them. And you know, speaking to some of our students in Argentina, you know, they had to smuggle the first Bitcoin ATM into that country. So I know there's potential, but it's not that still needs to be fully cracked.
And I think this is a little on the last topic regarding the growth that we had talked about a minute ago. And this is something that I think gives Bitcoin instant credibility. So I want to laud you for doing this. But what are some of the higher profile schools that are involved in the CCN? Because whenever I see the list, you mentioned a few, but I want you to mention them again and maybe some other ones that we didn't talk about, because when mainstream media hears academia is adopting this, and I believe I think I heard it from you that Princeton has now added a class or a course on Bitcoin.
Yep.
You hear things like Ivy League schools talking about it. It gives it a credibility that, you know, really you can't get anywhere else, and it makes people listen way more. So first of all, congratulations. Second of all, who else is involved? Just name a few of the biggest names.
Thank you. I mean, obviously the founding chapters, Michigan, Stanford, MIT have been huge. MIT, we gave $100 in Bitcoin to every undergraduate. It reached almost every single student. That was huge. Obviously, MIT just released a great the MIT Bitcoin Club, our chapter there, released a great video yesterday explaining how MIT students could spend Bitcoin. So that's been awesome. Stanford, they're doing academic research. Susan Athey, she's a professor there. She does great stuff. Our McGill chapter, which was recently incorporated into the CCN, just announced that they're also going to do a Bitcoin drop as well. The University of Toronto is intimately involved with the Decentral guys in Toronto, and they're looking to host a huge hackathon in Canada in late spring. Overseas, I mean, we have incredible students in Ghana at Kenyatta University in Kenya. They've had this the Minister of Finance of Kenya come to their student meetup. So you know, it kind of is all over the world. You know, the United States has been a launching ground, but I'm excited to see what happens elsewhere as well.
Jeremy, you've had some really incredible success, but I imagine that you've also met with a great deal of skepticism. I'm wondering what the greatest obstacles have been for you and the College Crypto Network to actually introducing Bitcoin to academics and academic institutions. And if you want to follow up on that, conversely, what are the greatest obstacles to introducing these to students?
So one of the first obstacles we found was when we tried to get the University of Michigan to accept Bitcoin donations. We thought it would be the easiest thing in the world. You know, it's just like they have nothing to lose. Most large institutions already accept stock and artwork. So, you know, it wouldn't be a far reach, especially using a payment processor such as Bitcoin or BitPay or Coinbase, to really just have it immediately converted into fiat, taking on no risk. We kind of pitched all of that to the University of Michigan, and then the marketing departments and development departments were all about it. But somewhere along, either in Treasury or legal, the school was just like, no, we're not going to do that. And that was kind of stunning to me. I was like, look, this is just free money you can get. Like, why won't you take this? But it's an information bias. Or or an information shortfall. There's all these negative associations with this technology, and not understanding how payment processing works, which shouldn't be a hard thing to do or to explain, except when you don't get to speak to all the participants. Academics are better. Academics can be very receptive. I speak to a lot of academics, and I think one thing that's actually amazed me about this technology is how receptive academics are. My dad's a college professor. He doesn't get it, but he teaches Chinese history, so I don't really expect him to. But the individuals that choose to take the time to learn how Bitcoin works and understand the blockchain technology and what underlies Bitcoin, those folks really do get it. Harvey Campbell over at Duke, NYU professors there. Princeton has a whole bunch of Bitcoin development going on. Stanford, like I said, there are professors that are receptive to this. They're just kind of scattered, and I think as a lot of PhDs become professors, you're going to see that, because there's a lot of academic research being conducted in this space. So as frustrating as it can be to deal with large academic institutions, as long as the academics themselves are beginning to acknowledge the value of this technology, that's incredibly important. You look at Coin Center, led by Jerry Brito, who's over at George Mason, and there are these academics in this space. It just takes time. But I think it's the rate of academic research in this space is going to grow exponentially in the coming couple years.
That's fantastic to hear. I think Princeton has done a lot of research into crypto in general, Johns Hopkins University, so it's really exciting to hear.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Augur and why a prediction market? What is the big need in cryptocurrency for a prediction market?
Well, it's not about cryptocurrency at the end of the day. It's about humans. Betting is $1 trillion industry, and just over 1% of it occurs online. To me, that's crazy for multiple reasons. First, it's just like betting's an easy thing to do online. But secondly, right now, the way that betting's conducted throughout the world, this $1 trillion industry, has no social net benefit. There's no positive outcome. Some people make money, some people lose it, but there's no societal gain. But with prediction markets, there's a huge social benefit. Prediction markets, while some people bet no that something is going to happen, some people bet yes, those bets eventually converge to a percentage. Like 63% of people say something's going to happen, and that you can use that 63% can be used as the actual likelihood that an event will occur, whether Hillary Clinton gets elected or not. And that percentage, that convergence, has been proven in multiple economic studies to actually be an excellent indicator of whether something will happen. So if we can take a small fraction of this $1 trillion industry, put it on the blockchain, on a prediction market, and have that convergence occur in real time, you potentially have the most powerful forecasting tool in human history, while allowing people to do something they do already, but now just in a socially beneficial way. The fact that this uses Bitcoin just allows people from all over the world to participate, but it's not actually an essential feature of the technology.
And I think that's one of the more interesting parts, and that's what got me as a part of the team, and sold me on it, is the ability to use a cryptocurrency as the way to incentivize good predictions. And it's something where when you say the word prediction market, I did a lot of studying before I joined the team via documents Jeremy sent me, and just good old-fashioned Googling. And I kind of realized something, that this is lacking. This is a tool that's lacking, and it's a tool that really is something academics really want, social scientists want, scientists in general want, mathematicians want, because there is something to this, this accuracy that is in crowds. And to that, what I also think is that as statistical methods get more advanced, and by advanced I mean more thought out as far as just the entire process. I'm a very Bayesian fan. I had a very good conversation with Joey from the team who we're having on next week, and we spoke about this when I was in San Francisco. And you're going to see that as these sophisticated methods become more in use, they're going to grow, and the accuracies just continue to snowball. And again, with us meeting with Robin Hanson, just speaking with him for a few minutes on this really taught me a lot, that this is an idea that is thought of by some economists, but other economists never even thought of this being a method to make better decisions. You know, and when you Google it and you do more research, you realize people are saying things like it's the killer app for Bitcoin. You know, academia really wants this. This is something that could benefit a lot of people. There's so many interesting aspects that are converging, especially things that interest me all at once here. I can't say enough positive about that, and that's why when you say why Augur, it took me a minute to figure out why Augur too. But once I figured it out, it was just the pieces fell together. But Eric, I'm sure you and James have more awesome questions, so I'm going to toss it back to you to ask Jeremy.
So I want to talk a little bit about some of the first initial targets for a prediction market, whether it's cryptocurrency or not, right? You know, what is the first use case? We talk in entrepreneurship and startups about making sure you nail down a niche. What is that first niche for Augur?
So you're gonna have multiple markets that are gonna rise very quickly because this is fully decentralized. Some of which will be out of our control, but there are a lot of things people like to bet on that they can't right now. Most things, in fact, and those sorts of markets are going to be created pretty early on. But markets for presidential elections, especially in foreign countries, where people may not have access to these sorts of tools, real good forecasting tools, this could be incredibly important. You look in most of Africa. Most elections are rigged, and the idea that there can be kind of this impartial forecasting tool that may not reflect what actually occurs in the elections, but may reflect the truth or of sentiment is very interesting. Furthermore, as a hedging tool, especially for farmers in Latin America that want to hedge against crops, that's incredibly powerful because they may not have agricultural insurance like they have in the developed world. I can't say for sure what will be the killer apps, but I think some of the apps that people probably can't find right now on the internet will initially draw them to Augur, and then will end up leading to other more socially beneficial markets being seeded.
I'm absolutely fascinated by this, Jeremy. There's an idea in political theory called regime uncertainty, and I can see this, as you were saying, with presidential elections in countries with corrupt governments. This could really help a lot of people. I mean, by removing a lot of that uncertainty about rules that will be coming down or various impositions. But what I'm very interested in is how you think governments will react to this, actually, because it is a betting platform. It does have a lot of somewhat controversy around it from a legal perspective. But what do you think are the obstacles you'll be facing, and if any, and how do you plan to move forward in that?
Of course. I mean, legally speaking, we're on very solid ground for Augur as legally being safe. We don't really fall under any federal agency's jurisdiction. This is a massive legal gray area. There are no laws that really apply to us. Will we piss off governments? Absolutely. I mean, I studied political strategy in college. It was a major I developed. A big part of it was game theory, but also political science, social psychology, military strategy. And the notion that this sort of tool like Augur will bring out truth is incredibly politically dangerous. It can incentivize whistleblowing, of corruption, of misbehavior by governments, and that's incredibly threatening. At the same time, however, once you throw this on the blockchain and it's decentralized, there's not much these governments can do. It's the same thing with Bitcoin. You can ban it, but I know plenty of Russians that have Bitcoin. We actually have a secret club over there. So you can try to ban a decentralized technology, but once it's out in the open, it's going to be there forever, whether or not it works.
I completely agree, and I also think that when it comes to this, there is enough layers with using cryptocurrency as the way to benefit from it. I think that's another interesting point that as we get closer to releasing more about the project, that we're going to there's going to be a lot of little intricacies that we're going to go into further detail on and the way it's used. So it's really going to be something that's going to be interesting, but I think we're on the safe side from everything I've seen and all the research that Jeremy and our attorneys and our yet-to-be attorneys, I'm sure will conclude with us. So we have a lot of people we've spoken with and even more that we're hoping to speak with to make sure our ground's covered. And I think as something with Augur, there's so much social benefit, and there is such a strong positive need for this in academia that we really think that the title prediction market kind of says it all, and that's why I really like that title, because we're not trying to act as someone that's taking bets. We're here trying to incentivize good decision making. There's a difference, and again, I keep quoting Robin Hanson, but I can't. That's just because of how impressed I was with hearing him speak. He basically just explained in really clear terms that is what you say you expect and you're hoping to achieve isn't always what you really want to achieve, and your decision making can have a lot of influences that are not as simple as, is this the best decision? They can have social, political, cultural, things that are really influencing your decisions that actually result in you making that decision not for the best and maybe not the most accurate decision that you could. These are human behavior things, and the first way to answer that is to get solid data, and the crowd is a really great way to do that. The other thing I learned as part of learning about prediction markets was how many companies also employ prediction markets internally. I know Google's one. Jeremy, I would love it if you can go to a little more detail about that, because you were fascinating when you told me about it.
Absolutely. So Tony was like, oh, we should focus on applying prediction markets to companies because, it's a great forecasting tool, especially when people are incentivized to be honest. But in fact, this is actually a heavily used tool internally at IBM, Hewlett-Packard, Google, as Tony said. The French government uses it. The Department of Defense uses these prediction markets. They're a wildly popular tool because people are honest about what they think is going to happen, and it gives organizations a good sense of how reasonable they should be with their predictions. Now, sometimes C-suite individuals don't like to have their own estimates being undermined by the crowd, but overall, these are very popular and effective tools, both internally in organizations and societally.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much, Jeremy, for being able to join us today. I want to wrap this up with, is there anything remaining that you want to sort of plug? Where can people find out about Augur? Where can they find out about the College Cryptocurrency Network? Tell us some things that you want to plug, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
We've got some good URLs. For CCN, it's just collegecrypto.org. If you're a student, registration's super easy. We'll guide you through the whole process, help you set up a club, get you in touch with good people, get you internships, bring you into this community, which is probably the most important thing that our organization can do. Augur, we don't have too much going on right now publicly. You can go to augur.net. You can sign up for our newsletter. And then we'll have alpha and beta testing in the coming months, a crowd sale in May. But for now, just follow us on Twitter. It's Augur Project. That's our social media handle for every website. So easy to access, easy to find. You can follow me on Twitter. My handles have been here the whole time. I'm not that interesting though, so I think that's all my plugs.
You are. You're a fascinating individual, Jeremy. Trust me.
Again, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a very enjoyable chat, and we hope to have you on again in the future.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.